The small town of Willow Creek had always been a quiet, sleepy place. Nestled deep in a valley surrounded by thick forests, it was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were hard to keep. But over the past year, the town had been gripped by a dark fear. People had started disappearing. At first, it was chalked up to accidents. Willow Creek's surrounding wilderness was vast and unforgiving. But then the bodies started turning up. Each victim was found in the forest, posed meticulously in a macabre tableau, their lifeless eyes staring at the canopy above. The media dubbed the killer the Whisperer, as rumors spread that survivors of near-miss encounters had heard faint whispers in the woods, leading them astray before they narrowly escaped the same fate. Detective Harper Quinn was called in to investigate. A seasoned investigator with a sharp mind and a relentless determination, Harper had seen her fair share of grisly cases. But something about this one felt different. The killer wasn't just targeting random people. There was a pattern, one she couldn't quite put her finger on. As Harper delved into the case, she discovered a chilling connection between the victims. Each had ties to an old, abandoned sanitarium on the outskirts of town. The sanitarium had been closed for decades after a fire destroyed much of the building, leaving behind nothing but charred ruins and whispers of the horrors that had taken place there. One night, Harper decided to visit the site. The air was thick with the scent of moss and decay as she walked through the crumbling remains. She found graffiti on the walls, most of it the usual teenage vandalism. But one phrase stood out. "The shadows see all." Beneath it, she found a symbol etched into the stone, a spiral surrounded by jagged lines. Harper took a photo and sent it to a friend, a professor of symbology, who confirmed her worst fears. The symbol was associated with an old cult that believed in purging sins through ritual cleansing. The cult had supposedly disbanded decades ago. But could the killer be a surviving member? The cult called themselves the Shadow Spiral, a name that was both enigmatic and foreboding. Their creed was rooted in the belief that humanity's sins could never truly be forgiven. Not by gods, not by confession, not even by death. They believed in a concept they called shadow memory, the idea that sins left stains on the world, stains that grew and festered, infecting generations of descendants. To them, the only way to cleanse this stain was through ritual sacrifice. The cult operated in secret for decades, hidden in the shadows of society. Members were selected carefully, often indoctrinated through fear and manipulation. They targeted the vulnerable, the grieving, the outcast, the broken. Once inside, there was no leaving. The rituals of the Shadow Spiral were horrifying. They believed that suffering and pain amplified the cleansing process. Victims were not killed outright. Instead, they were subjected to psychological torment, isolated in darkness, and made to confess their supposed ancestral sins. The cult used a mix of ancient symbols and grotesque methods to purify their victims. The central symbol, the spiral surrounded by jagged lines, represented the eternal cycle of sin and redemption, a spiral descending deeper into darkness, surrounded by the pain necessary to escape it. Members tattooed this mark on their bodies, often in hidden places, as a sign of devotion. One of their most infamous rituals was known as the Whispering Veil. Victims were taken to the forest, blindfolded, and led through a labyrinth of trees, while cult members whispered their accusations from the shadows. The whispers grew louder and more frantic until the victim broke, consumed by fear. If they survived the ordeal, they were either killed or released to spread tales of the haunted forest, discouraging outsiders from venturing near the cult's domain. The old sanitarium in Willow Creek had once been their stronghold, a perfect cover for their activities. Patients with no families or those deemed lost causes became unwilling subjects of their rituals. The staff, all members of the cult, masked their atrocities as treatments for mental illness. When the fire consumed the building, many thought it was the end of the cult, but survivors carried on their dark practices in secret. Rumors persisted that the fire had been set intentionally, not as an accident, as part of a grand cleansing ritual. As Harper Quinn dug deeper into the case, the killer began toying with her, pulling her into a twisted game of psychological warfare. One evening, as Harper returned home after a long day of chasing dead ends, she noticed something was off. The door to her modest house, which she was certain she had locked, hung slightly ajar. Her hand instinctively went to her sidearm as she pushed it open. Inside, everything appeared untouched, at first. But then she noticed it. A single envelope lying on her kitchen table, stark white against the dark wood. She opened it carefully, her breath catching as she pulled out a photograph. It was a picture of the latest victim, taken hours before their body was discovered. The victim was alive in the photo, sitting in what appeared to be a dark, cluttered room. On the back of the photo, written in elegant, looping handwriting, were the words, "Catch me if you can, but be wary. Shadows remember you." The message wasn't just a taunt, it was a promise. Harper knew what it meant. The Whisperer was enjoying the game. Over the following days, Harper began finding small, seemingly insignificant items left for her. A red string tied in a knot on her car door handle. A single chess piece, the knight, left on her desk at the station. Each object seemed random, yet Harper couldn't shake the feeling they were part of something larger. Then came the phone calls. They always came late at night, always from an untraceable number. The voice on the other end was soft, almost soothing, but distorted, as if filtered through static. The Whisperer spoke in riddles. "Do you hear the forest's secrets, detective? They know your name. They remember. Do you?" Every time Harper tried to engage, the call would end abruptly, leaving her alone with the echo of their taunting words. One night, Harper woke to the sound of whispering in her own home. Heart pounding, she grabbed her gun and moved through the darkened rooms, following the sound. It led her to her basement. Inside, she discovered another envelope pinned to the wall with a hunting knife. This time, the envelope contained a map. It was a hand-drawn sketch of the Willow Creek forest, marked with a single X, deep in the woods. Alongside the map was a chilling note. "I've prepared something special for you. Come alone, or someone else will take your place." Against her better judgment, Harper followed the map. Armed and alert, she trekked through the forest under the cover of night, her flashlight casting long, eerie shadows. The forest seemed alive, the rustling leaves and creaking branches blending with faint, disembodied whispers. When she reached the marked spot, she found a clearing. At its center stood a crude wooden table, and on it lay a single object, a small music box. Harper approached cautiously, her every sense screaming that this was a trap. The music box was already open, playing a hauntingly slow tune that reminded her of childhood. Harper's breath caught in her throat as she heard footsteps behind her. She turned, gun drawn, and froze. Standing few steps away from her was her father, his face lined with age, but his eyes sharp and piercing. He held his hands up, a faint, almost sad smile on his lips. "Harper," he said softly, "I knew you'd figure it out eventually." Her mind raced, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. The old sanitarium, the symbols, the victims, all of it tied back to him. "You're the Whisperer," she said, her voice trembling. "You killed them." "I didn't kill them," he said, moving towards her slowly. "I cleansed them." just as they cleansed your mother." "What are you talking about?" Her father spoke in hushed voice. "Your mother knew the truth about the sanitarium. She tried to expose it, but the cult wouldn't let her. They made it look like an accident, Harper. And I couldn't stop them. So I became them, to destroy them from the inside." Tears blurred Harper's vision. "You didn't destroy them. You became worse. You murdered innocent people." "Innocent?" he snapped, his calm demeanor cracking. "They were descendants of the ones who killed your mother. They carried the stain of their ancestors' sins. I did what I had to do, to protect you, to make things right." Harper's finger hovered over the trigger as her father reached for something in his pocket. "Don't," she warned. He pulled out a small, tattered journal and tossed it onto the table. "You want the truth? It's all there. Every name, every sin, including mine." Harper hesitated, the weight of her gun feeling unbearable. "You're coming with me. We're going to end this." Her father smiled sadly. "No, Harper. You're going to end this." Before she could react, he lunged toward her, a knife gleaming in his hand. The gunshot echoed through the forest. Her father staggered, blood blossoming across his shirt. He fell to his knees, looking up at her one last time. "The shadows. They'll remember," he whispered before collapsing. The case was closed. But Harper's life would never be the same. The journal her father left behind revealed horrifying truths about the sanitarium, the cult, and her family's dark legacy. As she tried to move on, the whispers followed her, haunting her dreams and reminding her of her father's final words. The shadows hadn't forgotten, and neither had she.